Okay, the next part of the map is the branded path. What even is the branded path? The branded path is pretty much the story and journey that this client is going to follow in order to become a raving fan of your client's brand. It's going to take them from the start to the end. And if you've ever heard of a sales funnel, that's pretty much what we're doing, but in a story and branding format. So here, I'll give you an example of what it actually looks like in the file. So here's an example. You can see that I've got lots of different boxes. There's a start box, an engage box, and then it moves down to purchase. Then we go to retention and then to fan status. This is how I best like to show where it is that we're starting. And then in each box, we're going to be describing a little bit more into detail about what's going on in that step and what's going on in that step. This will help your client make specific branding choices for each platform because they now know what to focus on in that client's personality and problems. They understand like, oh, in this platform, like on our website, when they're visiting this page, this is the stage of their journey that they're going to be at. And these are the things that we really need to focus and key in on. Okay, so how to create the branded path. I'm going to teach you how to do that box by box and step by step. But before we dive into what each box actually is, I want to tell you a few things that every box, no matter what box and step it is, needs to include. So one thing that every box needs to include is it needs to have lots of adjectives. These are adjectives that you can pull from the voice section of the strategy session. That's what I like to do. But make sure you load this with adjectives. I'm going to explain why it is that we need adjectives a little bit more at the end. But really what you're going to be doing is you're going to be linking those adjectives to solving specific problems. So just make sure for now that you're including it. Another thing that you're going to want to include is platforms that are going to be important and how did they get to this step. So if they're in the beginning portion in this start box or the start step, are they on Instagram? Are they on a website? Are they talking to friends? Did they get there because they saw a blog post from a referral? Talk about where this came from. Okay, the next thing is problems that are relevant at this step. So you have a big, huge whole list of problems, core problems that this person is having. And what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to say, okay, at this stage in the journey, this problem is really, really relevant and really, really in their face right now. This is the main thing that they're focusing on. And so maybe while they're at this step in the journey, this is the problem that we want to focus on instead of X, Y, and Z. Another thing that you're going to want to mention is products and promotions that are going to be relevant at this step. This isn't something that I do for every single one of my clients because not all of my clients have products and promotions that are going to be available for each step in the journey. But some of my clients have really awesome sales funnels where they have leading and beginning products that are great for beginners and great for people who are getting like their feet wet into the product or industry. And then it kind of leads up to bigger and bigger and bigger purchases. So you're going to want to make sure to include those into each step of the sales process. Okay, so let's actually get into each of the boxes. Now, the very first box, and there's only one of these boxes, is the start box. The whole purpose of this box is to show your audience where they are at before they find the client. This is when they first start to realize that they have a problem, and this problem needs to be solved. So what you're going to write out in this box is what is the problem, how does it make them feel, use the adjectives in there, and how did they even discover that problem? Where did it come from? Now, after you've written that box, you're going to move into engage. Now, there's a few different engage boxes. There's, I believe, 3 or 4 engage boxes, however many you want to include. This is everything in between them realizing the problem and between them making a purchase to solve the problem. So where are they going to go look for information to help them solve the problem? Are they going to, again, go to friends, Instagram? And how are they feeling throughout this process of trying to discover the solution? How are they making that decision to buy? Okay, and then there's one purchase box. This is when they finally decide to make a purchase. So what you're going to want to write out in this box is how do they feel about that purchase? What finally made them decide to bite the bullet and buy it? Okay, now you would think that after they purchase, the sales funnel would be over, but it's actually not. Just because they've purchased, it doesn't mean that they're a raving fan yet. And so we need to make sure that once they purchase, that they're really, really happy with the product or the service or whatever. So you're going to move on and you're going to talk about how do we retain them as a client or a customer. So problems don't go away now that they've purchased. How are you going to make sure that they don't have buyer's remorse? what does the product slash service need to feel and be like in order for them to get what they need out of it? So you could go into details about what it is, fun little surprises that they get out of the product or service, or what about the product made them feel a certain way to solve one of their problems. Now, this is the last box, and there's only one of these boxes. This is the fan status box. This is everything. This is the box that everything has been leading up to. So the fan status box is when the buyer finally starts to become an advocate for your client's brand. They start telling their friends and they start sharing it on social media. So what ultimately about the product or service made them get there? This is kind of where you're like encapsulating the overall feeling of the experience. And you also want to talk about how easy it was for them to become an advocate, to start sharing for it. Okay, so that's all of the steps in the journey, and hopefully you've written out a short little summary for each one of those steps. Now, what you're going to do after you've written that all out is you're going to bold all of the adjectives in each box. Now, I told you this was going to be important that you include adjectives into each box, and here's why. You're going to brand each step of the path. You really are giving a feeling and a personality to that step. It gives your client so much clarity when they decide, okay, if we're going to be focusing on Instagram, how do we brand our Instagram? This is the box we need to focus on, and these are the adjectives that it needs to fill. Here's a few examples of what I've done that you can kind of look on. I've highlighted reflective, detail orientation, intimate, stunning, kind, inviting. You can kind of read through these and get some ideas of what it actually looks like in practice. But really, it just helps you and your client know what to focus on for each step and platform because you know exactly where your client's head is at and when and why they're visiting that platform. So just a quick overview, what you're going to be doing in this section is you're organizing your audience's problems and solutions into a storyline and timeline format. What you're going to want to do is you're going to want to include lots of adjectives, the platforms that are important into each step, problems and relevant promotions / products into each box. And the process goes from start to engage to purchase to retention to fan status. Then lastly, after you've done all that, you're going to bold all of the adjectives to brand each step.